Do you struggle to remember what you read? You're not alone. Studies show that people forget 90% of what they read within a week. Shocking, right? But what if you could remember everything you read? Imagine the possibilities. Here's a surprising fact. Memory champions can recall hundreds of items in order. They use special techniques that anyone can learn. These methods aren't just for geniuses, they're for everyone. In this video, we'll explore how you can use these powerful strategies to boost your memory. We'll dive into mind mapping, chunking, the Feynman Technique, mnemonic devices, active recall, and the memory palace. These are not just fancy terms. They are tools you can use to remember everything you read. Ready to unlock your brain's full potential? Let's get started and transform how you learn and remember. Chapter 1. Mind Mapping Magic. Transform words into visual stories. Imagine turning the words you read into vivid images that stick in your mind. That's the magic of mind mapping. Tony Buzan, who popularized mind mapping, once said, "A mind map is the easiest way to get information into and out of your brain." Let's dive into this powerful tool. Mind maps start with a central idea. Place it in the middle of your page. From there, draw branches to main topics related to the idea. Each branch should represent a key concept. Use different colors for each branch. This makes it visually appealing and easier to recall. For example, if you're reading a book about history, put history in the center. Branches could include ancient civilizations, Middle Ages, modern history, and so on. Under ancient civilizations, you might have sub-branches like Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans. Adding images to your mind map can boost memory by up to 65%. If you're studying the Roman Empire, draw a small Colosseum next to it. Images make the concepts more memorable. Another tip is to use keywords instead of full sentences. This keeps your mind map clear and uncluttered. Keywords are easier to remember and help trigger your memory of the larger concept. Mind maps aren't just for students. Business professionals, writers, and even artists use them. They help organize thoughts and see the big picture. Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Group, often uses mind maps for brainstorming. Statistics show that students who use mind mapping retain 32% more information compared to those who don't. It's a technique that can change how you learn and remember. One unique fact is that mind maps mimic the way our brains naturally think. Our brains like to make connections and associations. Mind mapping taps into this natural process. Try using mind mapping software like Xmind or MindMeister. These tools can make creating mind maps easier and more flexible. You can also update them as you learn more. Incorporating colors, images, and keywords isn't just fun, it's effective. Studies show that using these elements can double your memory retention. The visual aspect engages your brain in a way that plain text doesn't. You don't need to be an artist to create a mind map. Stick figures and simple drawings work just as well. The goal is to make connections that your brain can easily follow. Mind mapping can also help you review material. Before a test or presentation, go over your mind map. This visual review can jog your memory and reinforce what you've learned. Start small if you're new to mind mapping. Try creating a mind map for a short article or chapter. As you get comfortable, move on to larger projects. The beauty of mind mapping is that it's adaptable. You can use it for almost any subject or project. From planning a vacation to writing a novel, mind mapping can make the process more enjoyable and effective. One final tip: personalize your mind maps. Use symbols, doodles, and colors that mean something to you. This personal touch can make your mind maps even more memorable. Chapter 2. Chunking Techniques. Break down information like a pro. Chunking is a technique that turns overwhelming information into manageable bits. Think of it as taking a big puzzle and breaking it into smaller, easier to handle pieces. George A. Miller, a cognitive psychologist, famously noted that the human brain can hold about 7 pieces of information at once. Let's explore how chunking can help you remember everything you read. When you read, look for natural breaks in the material. These breaks can be chapters, sections, or even paragraphs. Use these as your chunks. By focusing on smaller sections, you make the information less intimidating. A study showed that students who use chunking strategies improve their recall by 50%. It's a simple yet powerful way to enhance your memory. Take notes while you read, summarizing each chunk in a few sentences. This active engagement with the material helps reinforce what you've read. It also makes review easier later. For instance, if you're reading a complex science article, Break it down into chunks like introduction, methods, results, and discussion. Summarize each part in your own words. One unique fact about chunking is that it's not just for reading. Musicians use chunking to learn long pieces of music. By breaking a composition into smaller sections, they can master each part before putting it all together. Create a mental file system for your chunks. Label each chunk with a keyword or phrase that captures its essence. This labeling helps you organize the information in your brain. Did you know that phone numbers are a great example of chunking? Instead of remembering 10 separate digits, we group them into chunks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. This makes the number easier to remember. Another effective method is to connect new chunks to information you already know. This creates a network of related ideas in your brain, making it easier to recall the new information. Research shows that chunking can significantly reduce cognitive load. When you break information into chunks, your brain doesn't have to work as hard to process and remember it. Practice chunking with everyday tasks. Break down your to-do list into smaller, manageable chunks. This practice can improve your chunking skills for reading and studying. Use visual aids to support your chunks. Diagrams, charts, and tables can help you organize information visually. This dual coding theory suggests that our brains remember visual and verbal information better when combined. Remember to review your chunks regularly. Spaced repetition, a technique where you review material at increasing intervals, can boost long-term retention by 200%. One interesting quote from Make It Stick by Peter C. Brown is, "Effortful recall, where the effort is itself an aid to retention." Chunking requires effort, but this effort makes the information stick. Finally, be patient with yourself. Chunking is a skill that gets better with practice. Start with smaller chunks and gradually tackle more complex material as you become more comfortable. Chapter 3. The Feynman Formula. Teach to retain. Richard Feynman, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, believed that the best way to understand something is to teach it. This technique, known as the Feynman Technique, can dramatically improve your retention. It's based on the idea that if you can explain a concept in simple terms, you truly understand it. Start by reading a section of your material. Then, try to explain what you've read as if you're teaching it to someone else. Use simple language and avoid jargon. This forces you to process the information deeply and clarify your understanding. One study found that students who taught material to others remembered 90% of what they learned, compared to 60% for those who only read and studied. Teaching engages different parts of your brain, reinforcing the material. If you get stuck while explaining, it's a sign you need to review that part again. This feedback loop helps identify gaps in your knowledge. Revisiting these sections strengthens your understanding. Albert Einstein once said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." This quote captures the essence of the Feynman technique. Striving for simplicity ensures you grasp the core concepts. Create a cheat sheet while explaining. Write down the main points and explanations in simple terms. This serves as a quick review tool and reinforces your learning. Teaching doesn't have to be formal. Explain the material to a friend, family member, or even an imaginary audience. The act of verbalizing what you've read solidifies your memory. Did you know that medical students often use this technique? By teaching complex concepts to each other, they retain information better and understand it more deeply. It's a proven strategy in rigorous academic settings. Use analogies and metaphors to simplify complex ideas. Comparing new information to something familiar makes it easier to understand and remember. For example, explaining DNA as a recipe book for building proteins makes the concept more relatable. You can also write blog posts or create videos explaining what you've learned. This not only helps you remember but also shares your knowledge with others. Teaching online can be a powerful tool for retention. A study from Washington University showed that students who self-explained during study sessions performed 30% better on tests. This highlights the power of actively engaging with the material. Reflect on your teaching sessions. What parts were easy to explain? What parts were difficult? This reflection helps you identify areas needing further study and reinforces what you already know. The Feynman technique is flexible. Use it for any subject, from history to science to literature. The key is breaking down complex ideas into simple, understandable parts. Chapter 4. Mnemonic Marvels. Craft clever memory aids. Mnemonics are powerful tools that turn ordinary information into memorable nuggets. These memory aids work by associating new information with familiar patterns, images, or phrases. Let's dive into crafting your own mnemonic marvels. One common mnemonic device is the acronym. Create a word where each letter stands for something you need to remember. For instance, Holmes helps recall the Great Lakes, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. Another technique is the acrostic. Form a sentence where the first letter of each word represents the information you need to remember. For example, every good boy deserves fudge helps music students remember the lines of the treble clef E, G, B, D, F. Using rhymes in songs can also aid memory. Our brains are wired to remember patterns and rhythms. Think of how easily you remember song lyrics. Create a rhyme or jingle to recall important facts. Did you know that using imagery can enhance memory by up to 400%? Visualize what you're trying to remember. If you need to recall a grocery list, picture each item in a specific place in your house. The method of loci, also known as the memory palace, involves associating information with specific locations. Picture yourself walking through a familiar place and placing information in different spots. This technique dates back to ancient Greece and is still used by memory champions today. One unique fact is that mnemonics leverage the brain's natural preference for stories and images. Creating a vivid mental image or story around the information makes it more memorable. Personalize your mnemonics. Use references and images that are meaningful to you. The more personal the association, the stronger the memory. In a study, students who used mnemonic devices improved their test scores by 77%. This highlights the effectiveness of these simple, yet powerful tools. Practice creating mnemonics for everyday tasks. For example, if you need to remember a colleague's name, associate it with a distinctive feature or a familiar word. Mnemonic devices can also be used to learn foreign languages. Create associations between new vocabulary and familiar words or images. This makes the learning process more enjoyable and effective. Use the PEG system for numbered lists. Associate each number with a rhyming word, 1 sun, 2 shoe, and create an image linking the rhyming word with the item you need to remember. Remember, mnemonics work best when they're vivid and outlandish. The more unusual the image or story, the more likely it will stick in your mind. Don't be afraid to get creative. One interesting quote from Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer is, "Our memories are not like hard drives that record bits of data. They are more like sketchpads that capture broad outlines." Mnemonics help fill in these outlines with vivid details. Chapter 5, Active Recall, the Secret of Supercharged Learning. Active recall is a powerful technique that transforms passive reading into active learning. It's all about testing yourself on the material you've read. This process helps solidify the information in your brain and improves long-term retention. Start by reading a section of your material. Then, close the book and try to recall the main points from memory. Write down what you remember. This simple act of recalling information strengthens neural connections. Studies show that active recall can improve memory retention by 50%. It forces you to retrieve information, making it more likely to stick in your mind. A study by Roediger and Butler found that students who used active recall scored 30% higher on tests than those who simply reread the material. This technique is backed by solid research. Use flashcards for active recall. Write a question on one side and the answer on the other. Quiz yourself regularly. Apps like Anki can help with this process by spacing out the intervals between reviews. Spaced repetition, combined with active recall, is a game changer. Review material at increasing intervals, after 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, and so on. This method takes advantage of the spacing effect, which enhances long-term memory. One interesting fact is that the act of struggling to recall information actually helps strengthen your memory. This concept, known as desirable difficulty, was coined by cognitive psychologist Robert Bjork. After a study session, take a few minutes to write a summary from memory. This forces you to organize your thoughts and identify key points. It also highlights any gaps in your understanding. Practice retrieval in different contexts. Quiz yourself in various locations and times of day. This variability helps reinforce the information and makes it easier to recall under different circumstances. Another effective method is the question-first approach. Before reading a section, turn headings into questions. For example, if a heading is, "The Causes of World War II," ask yourself, what were the causes of World War II? Read to find the answer, then test yourself. Join a study group and quiz each other. Teaching and being quizzed by others adds variety to your study routine and can help uncover new perspectives. A quote from Make It Stick by Peter C. Brown is, "Retrieval practice, recalling facts or concepts or events from memory, strengthens memory." This underscores the importance of active recall in the learning process. Remember to stay consistent. Regular practice is key to making active recall effective. Set aside dedicated time for review sessions and stick to it. Use different formats for your self-quizzes. Mix up multiple choice questions, short answer questions, and essays. This variety keeps your brain engaged and helps cover different aspects of the material.